Who's your money on to be the next UKIP leader? Paddy Power, you beauty!
Michael Heaver here for Westmonster with Peter Whittle, leadership contender.
Hello, Michael.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How's the campaign going?
Well, I mean, it's been crisscross all across the country. And we've done, I think, last night was about the 16th hustings, which was in Gillingham. What has been amazing about it, actually, is the sheer number of people who've been turning out. I mean, you've got audiences like 160, 100. It's in Peterborough the weekend, and there were like 70 people on a Sunday evening. I mean, there's real fire in the belly, actually, of this party. And when you hear these reports that we're going down and all the rest of it, this is not what you're seeing on the ground. And I mean, basically, there's 7 of us. There's now 7 candidates. We've all been going around, and it is incredibly impressive. I mean, it's very inspiring to see so many coming out. So it's been great. It's a great preparation for what it's going to be like as well if one's elected.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people from the outside will be looking at UKIP now and thinking, look, it's job done. After the general election, the party's finished. They'll be surprised to hear there's a big turnout at these hustings.
Yeah.
What's motivating the people that are at those hustings, do you think, to still turn out for UKIP and have a real hunger for the party?
Well, because they know that there's every reason to UKIP. I mean, you would know, Michael, how many times have they said that's it for UKIP? Going right back to when Cameron said, I'm going to have a referendum, or that was the end of UKIP. It has been a very, very difficult time, there's no question. And these people coming out, they want to see changes in the party. I totally understand that, and there have got to be changes in the way that this party is run. But they do not see any other party interested in their particular concerns about Britain, about British culture, about the way we're going to be going after Brexit, and they don't trust the other parties on Brexit, quite understandably. Look what happened at the last general election. People will be ruining the day, I think, that they actually went and voted for another party. And I think that the point is it's becoming clearer that there is actually a wider and wider space opening up for this party now. And I mean, I've never doubted our future. Now, and if you've got to remember one thing, 6 months ago, you would be sitting here having conversations with your guests, and they will all be saying things like, well, that's it for Labour. This election is going to be the final nail in the coffin. Didn't you even hear that? I mean, I heard it. I think I even said it myself. And look, we're now looking at a situation where Labour are ahead in the polls, and there's the possibility of Corbyn being Prime Minister. Everything changes, nothing stays the same. And I think it's going to be a really exciting time for us in the future, if we do it right.
And what would be your version of doing it right? What are UKIP members looking at the situation now? What are they looking forward, moving forward? What do they want? What are you offering? How do you set yourself apart from the other candidates for the top job?
Well, I think that the point really is that, we talked about being the guard dogs of Brexit and all the rest of it. And I think that obviously that's true, but I think it's got to be more than that. We've actually got to say, look, we started this party with a really big idea, and people said, they're nutcases and all the rest of it. That was coming out of the EU. It was a big existential idea, and it worked, and we did it. And I think that now we've got to say to people in the party, we have got to be the saviours of our democracy, because I see a slow betrayal going on. We've got to be the saviours of our democracy, but also we have got to be the party that starts to kick against and to challenge and to speak against what I would see as like 50, 60 years of chipping away at this country, of undermining this country's traditions, of basically scorning British history, of basically ruining a sense of patriotism and identity. These are big things. The other parties are not going to do it. The Tory party is only interested in money. I believe that. They're only interested in the bottom line. They don't care about these things anymore. Labour are undisguised in their hatred, actually, or their distaste for British things. This has got to be our mission. It's got to be one to actually say, look, we're not just a nation state on paper anymore. We are actually going to be a nation state, again, in practice. We've got to be the party of that nation state.
Now, some of your opponents might say, well, Peter Whittle was deputy leader under Paul Nuttall at the last general election.
Yeah.
Obviously, the party suffered a pretty bad dismal result. How do you look back on that general election, and how would you respond to claims that perhaps that result could have been down to you as deputy leader as well as Paul?
Oh, well, they say a lot of things. I mean, they're all going for me at the moment. I think that maybe I should be flattered by that. I don't know. I think that it's quite simple. With the general election, there was one big mistake that was made, and that was the whole idea of standing down, for another Brexit candidate. It started off as a good intention, people like Kate Hoey, various Tory MPs, whatever, who'd been very strong in Brexit all the way along. But it kind of gathered speed, and before you know it, there was something like 300 constituencies without UKIP people. What that meant is that we went lower in the vote than we actually needed to. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times people come up to say, I would have voted for you, but there was just no one on the ballot paper. And that was a disastrous error. And I fought against it at the time. And under my leadership, we would never be the party of tactical voting. And I think a lot of people now would actually see that that is the right approach, because there'll always be a reason they'll give you why we should vote for somebody else. We should never. It should be vote UKIP, get UKIP.
Just turning to the Brexit process, obviously the big thing dominating the news agenda at the moment. Yeah. How do you see things? Obviously you're in the GLA, you're based in England and everything. How are you seeing the Brexit negotiations, the EU's behaviour, the UK government's performance? How do you assess that?
It's all over the place. It's all over the place. And I think it comes basically from an establishment who basically didn't want it to happen. I mean, if you take the long view of this and you strip away like the 24-hour news cycle aspect of this is what you're up against. You've got an establishment, you've now got an opposition party who are absolutely, straight out, they've come out for it, that's it, they're against Brexit. We all know that now, like we didn't before. But generally you've got an establishment and a civil service who did not want this to happen. And so, frankly, people are perplexed. I'm perplexed. You think, well, wait a minute. We're not some kind of naughty school kid going to the headmaster saying, look, can you let me off this detention? We are a proud independent nation, or we should be now. None of this should have happened. We should have just simply repealed the Europe Act straight away, or at the very least triggered Article 50 straight away. Now we're hearing all of this stuff about going forward. There might be this transitional period on free movement, that transitional period on customs union. Before you know it, I mean, basically, will the situation still be the same in about 10 years' time? This is a great worry. But the thing is, it's all the more reason why we've got to be here.
Now, you only get sort of one chance to make a first impression. If you were elected as UKIP leader, what would be your big first message that you'd come out the blocks making in terms of Brexit, in terms of the British political system, to get UKIP back on the map?
Well, I think, first of all, I think what is absolutely crucial in terms of messaging is that basically what's happened is that one of our great issues, which is migration, has been basically kicked into the long grass. We don't even own it anymore, actually. And I think that is terrible, because I see it as of historic proportions what's happening. This isn't just like we've got very high migration at the moment. This is of a different order altogether. When I'm in the GLA, talking in the London Assembly or wherever you go, all of the different sort of issues you're talking about, whether it's housing, whether it's congestion, whether it is transport, whether it is National Health Service, the big elephant in the room for most people is the fact of migration. It's the sheer number of people coming into our country. And this going around the country is still the biggest issue. We have sort of stopped talking about it. The Tories have kicked it into the long grass. Labour, as we know, actually actively encouraged it. We have absolutely got to own that issue once again. That is absolutely vital. Then I would say what it's about as well is looking at the whole of British society and saying who is basically caring for you, who is going to look after you. We're in danger at the moment from this threat from radical Islam. Why is it people are perplexed? Why is it that this is happening? That essentially we're getting used to this new normal of attacks. We've got to be the party that actually says we are the ones who take this threat seriously, because we understand what this threat's about. We have no worries about saying where it comes from. But we are in a situation now at the moment where the establishment here won't even name really the threat. So therefore, no wonder, how can you actually fight something like that when you can't even name it? we've got to go hard on all these issues, and I would absolutely do that. I have always spoken about these issues since I've been in UKIP. This is nothing new. Since I first came in as a culture spokesman before I was deputy leader, always talking about these things. We've got to say, for example, there's one law for all, right? No to Sharia law, right? Freedom of speech. We've once again got to become the party that really protects freedom of speech going forward. These are the big battles that I see happening over the next 10, 20 years.
As you say, you've spoken out about cultural issues in the past. Just two stories that have popped up recently I'd like to just ask you about quickly. Yeah. First of all, reports that girls as young as 5 are now wearing the hijab at school. And secondly, we hear today that a secondary school has banned girls from wearing skirts in this move for sort of a non-gender, gender-neutral approach.
Both of those ridiculous. I mean, the first one is very serious in the sense that why are 5-year-old girls being made to wear headdresses? As I understand it, that's something that usually Muslim girls maybe do as they reach maybe the teenage years or whatever. What's that about? I mean, as I understand it, it's not actually even in the Quran, but the fact is, even if it were, that is not the way we do things in this country. I mean, if you start having girls having to wear or being allowed to wear things which I think are all about essentially female subjugation, keeping women separate in some way, I think is utterly wrong. And I don't think it should be allowed. As for the other thing, there's a story too about John Lewis selling gender-neutral clothes.
One, yeah.
I mean, who are these people listening to? Who are they listening to? What I would say that there is obviously a drive amongst the kind of left and also the soft left who haven't got the balls really to stand up to it, to sort of break down pretty much everything. I mean, whatever it is, where it goes from the family unit right through to this kind of thing. Why is it this has suddenly come up now? It's almost because they've won the other battles, so they're going on to this now. And then basically we've got to oppose this.
Just turning back quickly to Brexit, there was talk today, a Conservative report come out basically claiming that, in fact, far from the UK handing the EU money, the EU could potentially owe 9.3 billion to the UK. What would be your thoughts on any Brexit bill that Brussels are asking for?
Well, I mean, I think there's absolutely no way we should pay anything. We've been paying billions in. We still are paying millions in. Paul Nuttall came up with quite a good line with that. He said, why should we pay a bill? He said, so we bought everyone in the bar drinks, and we've picked up the bill. So basically, why should we now sort of start paying you? It's ridiculous. And I mean, essentially what it is, it's this kind of arrogance of this organisation. Yeah, they should pay us back.
And finally, if you were elected as UKIP leader, over the next few years, what would you be aiming to achieve? What direction would you want to take the party, and where would you want it to be in a couple of years after the Peter Whittle leadership run?
Well, I think there are a number of things. One might seem like quite a small ambition, but we're around about 4% in the polls, right? In December, January this year, before the disaster that was Stoke, we were on about 12, 13. I would see it as one of my main ambitions within a year to get us back into double figures. We've got to be in double figures again. I don't see any reason why we should be. We started the year well. We'd already had Brexit 6 months before. So I think that is absolutely crucial. Many, many more members, but also we have got to secure our financial base. This is so, so important. When it comes to putting our message out, this is crucial. I mean, what you're doing here, for example, is your trailblazers. I've been saying this all around when I've been going on the hustles.
Yeah, you've spoken about UKIP having its own media.
We've got to take a leaf out of Trump's book, and I think some of the European parties have done this too. Look, I've done more media than any of the other candidates, right? I know what it's about. And you've got to do that. You've got to be on Newsnight, you've got to be on Question Time, you've got to do all of these things. But increasingly, you've got to bypass this media that is so biased. I mean, the broadcast media. Newspapers, you can pretty much pay your money and take your choice. When it comes to the broadcast media, never going to be fair on us, right? Never. We've got to actually go around that. You've got to say, well, look, we've got a Facebook page with 500,000 likes. I would like to see 2 shows a week, one which is very much like this, where the leader and our spokespeople talk to the public. The other one purely for the party, where they can sort of, question what's going on with the chairman. But this is the way. It's look how successful this has been with Westmonster. There's no reason why UKIP shouldn't do this. It's just that we've been very slow on this kind of thing in the past. We have got to start taking control of our own message. That's what Trump did. That's what we've got to do.
Peter Whittle taking back control indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Who's your money on to be the next UKIP leader? Paddy Power, you beauty!